But anyway, I'm Greg Monroe. I work for a company called SolarWinds. It's not an agency, it's actually a company that sells IT products. I look after their about 3 different Drupal sites that they have mostly for marketing. I've been doing Drupal for 11, 12 years now. SEO has been part of that job in a lot of ways. As you'll see, most of my examples here will come from a previous job where I worked for the Duke Health organization, which was very, very SEO driven there. And of course, the lawyers where I work say I have to say this is for me. It's not for the company, so it should not affect stock prices or anything like that. So start off. Why use structured data? Well, you get better SEO results is the obvious one. It also, the way you get there is it will improve the way when people search for things that involves your site or your site specifically, it will give back customized results that are better presentation of your site. And the end result of that, of course, is hopefully you get higher click-through rates and more conversions. So when I say, better presentations, I'm going to run through some of the examples here that you've probably seen on Google, but just site information. So, if you Google Duke Health, you'll get, a mini breakdown of the favorite places to go on dukehealth.org. I did this from my work in Morrisville. You'll notice that Google says, oh, you're looking for something that has different locations. They're showing you the different locations, giving you, information about those different locations. Knowledge graphs, those are the things that show up on the side. So, if you search for Neptune, you'll get the little Wikipedia or some other thing. If it's a company, for instance, if you're searching for a doctor, with structured data, you'll get graphs like this. Like the doctor, they know where she works, they have the reviews in there, a lot of information in there. So Google is making assumptions about what you need, so they're giving you contextual results back. Same thing with Highwire in Durham. I did this speech in DrupalCamp Asheville, and I knew we were going to Highwire Brewery in Asheville, and so I started off, I did a Google for Highwire in Asheville, and they didn't have a knowledge graph. They do not use structured data very well. The guys in Durham, the brewery in Durham, basically do a good job. They have things like events. So they're showing events at this place. They're a business, so Google can tell you when they're open. That's where you also structure data plus other social things tie into like busy. If you've gone someplace and this is how busy is something. So product panels, if you're selling something, whether it be pizza or tablets, you see those. So Google says, oh, you're looking for a specific service or a product, and it'll start showing you the little tabs, the tabs across there. So, it also does things like, oh, well, gee, Best Buy. I'm searching, there's Best Buys near to me. So it's telling me, oh, if I wanted to pick up a Samsung tablet, maybe I could go to Best Buy in here. I don't necessarily have to get it online because it's using the context. And in some cases, it's actually, with structured data, you can actually tell Google, oh, I have these in stock. And Google will say, oh, well, they have these products in stock, so I will feature them better. So rich snippets and social. Structured data pays into, sort of just, the entry for Dr. Barber, is not just, here's the link to her page and here's the description. It actually says, oh, I have enough information about that I can put the ratings up there. I can grab some of the information about the ratings. That's not necessarily the text from the top of the page there. This could be a Facebook or a Twitter post about, in fact, I think that is a Twitter post about a blog entry, and having the right structured data there will let the social media things do things like show images, give you more context about what you're trying to do. So that's kind of, why you want to do it and what the results are. Well, how did this happen? Well, it's Google and Bing. There's some magic sauce behind that they're not going to tell you about, and you'll never know because it changes. Social graphing. Social graphing is kind of an important thing. It's basically, you can think of it as privacy issues, but Google and all of the search engines are tracking, who you are, what you've been searching for, where you are, and pulling that all together so that you say, oh, this person, here's the keyword that they put in there, but they're in Durham and they're looking for tablets. So I can then say where close to that would be somebody that has that product that I'm looking for in there. And they've also been looking, their last search history has been a bunch of Samsung stuff. So maybe I'll offer them, here's a Samsung tablet from Best Buy. So it's putting together the social graph in order to kind of give the person searching something more contextual. If you're searching for Mariah Carey or a singer or something like that, Google might say, well, Mariah Carey is going to be in Raleigh in a certain date and show you that date or that event in there. So that's, that gets into the context-specific result pages. The search engines are trying to figure out what you're looking for, what you see for a doctor versus what you see for, say, the search for Neptune in there. Oh, this guy's looking for just information, so I'm going to do Wikipedia-based stuff versus this is a product or this is a service, and it's giving you different. You'll notice that Google gives you different result pages in there. So, and this use of site-specific structured data is how you can help Google identify what you're trying to do in your site and have it appear in these context-specific results pages to give Google that information to build a social graph that makes you part of the search in there. Going back to the example of Highwire Durham had structured data on their site. So Google knew to give me information about that in the sidebar and everything, versus Highwire Brewery in Asheville wasn't using structured data. So it gave me no information other than just the standard entry and click here to go to their website and stuff like that. So what is structured data? I've been talking about why you use it and how it affects searches. So this is actually from the schema.org site, but you can read that. But the takeaway is that web pages are generally free-form text. Computers do not know how to parse free-form text in the easiest way. So by including structured data on your pages and specific places in your site, it helps the computers better, the search engines better understand what you're trying to represent on that page, while still maintaining the look and feel that your client or that you want to present for your site there. So, kind of a little fractured fairy tale history of where structured data came and where it's going to. In the beginning, everybody had HTML meta tags. So the good old heyday of SEO was put a meta tag, put 2,000 keywords on it, and you've covered SEO. That's gone away. Every search engine I know totally ignores the keywords now. So don't even bother with them. Then we kind of got into the Babel period where basically different people were trying to solve specific structured data problems. The most famous of that is the RSS and RDF kind of words. The RSS was basically, I'm putting out articles and information, and I want people to know when I put new stuff out. You see it with blogs. So I'm putting out blogs, and I want people to have an RSS feed to be able to follow my blog. Well, that's structured data in there. That's a way of telling people in a computerized form, what you're doing in there. RDF, Open Graph. Open Graph was Facebook's way of adding structure in there. Things like iCard, HCard, Twitters, you still see things like you'll get an invite from a third party to a meeting, and it'll have an iCard attachment. That's actually structured data in there. So finally, though, we're getting into like unified theory here. Google, I think initially it was Google, Bing, and Yahoo, and then another company, famous company, which I can't remember, joined on. They all said, we're all trying to solve this problem rather than try to solve it as separate and individual. RSS is different from RDF, it's different from Open Graph. Let's come up with a way that we can solve it for all problems in here. And since it was backed by Google, being all the major search engines, that is kind of where we've ended up with structured data, and that's actually the kind of structured data that I'll mostly be talking about here. So, as I said, schema.org. You're going to learn about structured data. Schema.org is something you kind of need to look at here. As it was set up to be a community open source, pretty much an open source. There are ways people can contribute to it, but it is well funded and kind of I'm not exactly sure how much Google and the others play games in there, but it is pretty much a standalone organization now. They also said, well, we're going to define how to lay out, how to tag information so you know that, this store has this store has these open hours in there. But we're not going to limit it to how you put it on your website or how it gets to the website. So they allow multiple encodings. The RDFA and the microdata are the older ones. I'm going to talk about the JSON-LD because that's really the easiest way to do it, and it's the quick way that you can add stuff without really having to do a lot of template changes and things like that. So, and the vocabularies cover all sorts of things, which, words don't really, So, if you dig down into it here, and I've got some graphics that'll make all these words look a little bit better once understandable here. Basically, the way that the schemas are set up is they're a set of, types or classes, if you want to call them, like an organization, a doctor, things like that. And then basically you can have types that are derivatives of other types. So it's a kind of a class-based thing. So you can have everything starts with the root class is a thing called thing, literally, which has a couple of properties with it. So each class then has properties on it. So you can think of an organization as being, I think one of the types of organizations is, say, a business. So a business organization could have all sorts of properties like name, address, logo associated with it, hours of operation, services that they supply, and all of that. So those are all properties of that. Some of the properties they get from it's a subclass of organization, it's a subclass of this, and those properties kind of fall down in there. So, and as I just said, they're inherited in there. So that's verbiage, kind of confusing. Pictures always make things a little bit clearer. So, as I said, this is a sample. There's a whole big, if you go out there, half of understanding schema.org is the fact that there's literally thousands of different objects out there. So, so you've got a thing. Top level things are like creative works, events, organization, people, place, product. And then you can see I've expanded organization there. And this is just a subset of the kinds of organizations you can have there. So drilling down into kind of like properties, you can't really see that, but there's an example of, things like here, physician has 112 different properties. Part of understanding schema.org is also kind of being able to identify, these basically, when somebody sets up this, they just kind of abstract it to the point of yeah, this property might be worthwhile to have, but it's not really necessarily what you want to use. So part of it is kind of being able to go through and kind of say, well, yeah, if I'm trying to describe to a search engine information that might be useful for a search engine to understand about a physician, name, place that they work, organization that they work, skills. There's ways of basically saying this is an orthopedic surgeon versus this is a family practice surgeon. So you kind of got to think what Google is going to want to know about, and just kind of throw away the other 100 or so properties in there. As I said in the kind of my abstract for this is I'm going to talk about how to do this, not exactly what you should do, because everybody has a different opinion. So, and some properties can also reference other types. So one part of a creative work is called a website. So website can be basically website should be associated with an organization. So you have the organization that has all the information about that, and the website has information about the website. So this is kind of quick overview of what at least the schema.org structured data is. This is more about, how do you get that onto the website here? This is kind of the technical way is you got microdata, RFA, and the one I'm going to talk about because it's the easiest is what's called JSON-LD. Yeah, there. So this is an example of what JSON-LD actually looks like. You don't need to get too scared of this because we're also going to show you how to do this without ever having to create this. But some things to point out here is the ID there. This is a website, or this is an organization. This is the organization. So the ID is basically a URI that identifies this particular snippet to any place else. So you could put this on your home page, and then if you need to reference the organization on a subpage, you can just use that ID, and that works across domains, across whatever. So you kind of want to pick something that's unique to your organization there for an ID. Same as, that's basically to link all of your social media in there. So this basically points to the SolarWinds MSP Twitter channel, YouTube channel, Facebook location. You can also point to a logo in there. So that's an example of being able to suggest what images and things you can work. So enough of that. So I mentioned linking things together with those IDs. One of the things that you won't find easily in all of the documentation about JSON-LD is the fact that you can use that @ID to reference other things. If you go through the schema.org documentation and you look at website, it'll say, oh, you can have a publisher and you can have organization in there. And it kind of implies then you have to duplicate all the stuff that you did on the organization object. You don't have to do that. You can actually use this @ID and point to the the ID, the actual structure that you set up just somewhere on your site. Saves a lot of duplicating of entry and stuff like that, and it's kind of hidden away in, if you're curious about the standard, it's just hidden away in the JSON-LD standards there. So, now that I've confused you all with all the different classes and structures and stuff, I figured I'd try to do a quick case study here to show you how some of this kind of ties together. So, at the top you've got the Duke Health homepage. The structured LD that, actually we used when we did this, LD JSON was too new and Drupal or Google wasn't parsing it. So we actually had to do the RFDA embed, but basically it works the same way. So you'd want to have, information about your organization set up in that JSON-LD structure, information about the website there set up in that LD structure, which there are modules that will do this for you. So I'm just kind of walking you through all the theory, and then we'll get to the more practical sides here. We have doctor pages, doctor profile pages. So basically you want to set them up as a physician so they know that they're a physician. Aggregated rating. There are actually some things that you have to make sure. Drupal will not use aggregated ratings unless you can point to like a third party who's supplying those aggregated ratings. So Duke actually uses a third party to get all of their stuff in there. I don't know if you've ever been to any physician nowadays. You know, you're always after your appointment, they always send you a little email. Please fill out a survey, and so that survey goes to a third party organization, and then Duke points their aggregated ratings. Say that 3 times fast. Back to that service, so that gives them weight to Google in there. So you can't just make up your aggregated ratings. Clinic pages. You know, you've got. You say that it's a medical clinic, you've got address, hours of operations, all of those properties associated with medical clinics. You can also kind of list people who are on staff there. So what doctors work out of that clinic in there. There actually is a hospital organization for the hospital pages. So you can go through that. One of the things that is kind of an exception to using schema.org, blogs have been used using Open Graph structure since day 2, since Facebook identified it. You're better off in terms of across all social platforms to use the Open Graph tags than the schema.org tags for that. So you can see we do OG title, type, description, URL, image, site name. So, structured data in Drupal. Now we're getting down to the how-to part of the talk here. There used to be about 3 or 4 different ways to do metadata in Drupal. The meta tag module with Drupal 8, you know, a lot of times in Drupal 8 they've actually condensed down to a winner module. The meta tag module has become the winner in there. To go along with it, there's another project called the Schema Meta Tag project, which is basically an add-on to the meta tag API to support the schema.org information there. So, but basically, you know, you're not stuck with just schema.org. You can include everything. I don't know. There's a whole bunch of standards that I don't even know about. I guess one of the odd ones that's there is the Dublin standard, which is actually a librarian standard for electronically identifying books. So if you're a librarian and you're trying to use Drupal to do books, you can actually get a plug-in module for the meta tag and do things the right way for libraries in there. So the thing that I'll talk about a little bit, but it also makes it easy to manage because you can set up your global defaults and then do trickle down. So you don't have to say, oh, every time I create a new page or something like that, I have to remember and go set all these things for SEO data in there. And it does go down to the point where, oh, I can actually customize, you know, this is a special offer page and the sales group really wants it to be positioned slightly different than a normal product or something like that. So I can actually do customized SEO schema stuff at the individual node or page location. There's internationalization support and views support, which is also sometimes important when you're trying to do like listing things through views. So, quick setup guide. Obviously, you install the meta tag module, and then this is kind of my quick list if I'm setting up for that is the open graph, because that's used by a lot of different things. Views, because you want to be able to make sure your view pages are tagged right. And by the way, all this is out on Slideshow or SlideShare. Just at the end, you can do a search for the title, and you should be able to find either this one or the Asheville slides. Schema.org, meta tag for the obvious reasons, and that actually has other sub things, so you can actually choose what objects you're going to support in there. Like that's, I guess I did list them as like schema.org meta tag is the base. Then you can do like schema.org for website, schema.org for organization. So any of the classes you want to support, there's a whole wide set of that in there. So once you've got all that installed, you can go to the min config, search meta tag in there. You'll want to, I'll go into this a little bit more detail, adjust your global and entity defaults in there. If you want to have specific node types that you want to have custom, have the people when they're editing the node go down at the bottom and add meta information, you need to go into the content type of that entity that you want and specifically add the meta tags field to as an available field. So that means when you're editing the node, you'll actually be able to go down and on the tabs of the editing thing, you'll see expand and enter specific stuff. We do this for blog entries because we have a bunch of individual contributors who are doing blogs and they put the meta tags in themselves. So, yeah, and then you also, if you want to use translations, you need to mark it as translate this field. So, you can automate this by, as I said, they have global defaults, and they also make use of the tags module. I don't know how many people are familiar with that, but the tags module basically lets you say, oh, if I need the title of the node that I am currently on, you can write in kind of like bracket node : title, and there's a way to actually find that information. If you need the description or whatever, so basically you can set up defaults that automatically fill in the SEO information from the value of the content that you're showing at that point. And then you can actually come down and get into general categories like front page content in there. You can also then come down and say, I want to set different defaults for different entity types in there. So a blog may be different than a product in there. And then once again, as I talked about, if you've added that meta tags field to the content type, you can actually go down and say, I want to set the meta, I want to be able to set the SEO information for this specific node in there. So what does that look like on the system here? So once you go there, you'll see kind of the global and then the major categories here that you can go in and edit in there. If you click on the add, you can actually go down here and see the type basically will show you all your content entity types in there, so you can select a specific entity type, and then the different kinds of structured data you can add, like basic tags, open graph, and then like the schema.org type things there. So if you're setting the defaults here, global defaults, one of the things I always say, canonical URL. That's a very important thing from an SEO perspective. Google will ding you if you have the same canonical URL and the same content in there. So you want to make sure you're at least trying to produce, each page is going to have its own URL alias in there. A lot of people come in and they just kind of set it, and it's like the home page is the canonical URL, and so anyway. And title is the other kind of obvious thing you can do in there. content, you can get down into things like the node summary and node title name using the tags in there. So, yeah, blog entry, as I said, we usually treat them separately just because social media uses the OG tags more than they do anything else. Twitter might argue that they use Twitter cards, but in actuality, Twitter cards never got much traction, so they basically get all their information from the OG structure in there. So things that kind of are important, this is basically the things that are mostly important. Summary. Summary is what's going to show up underneath the image. Being able to specify the URL for your image in there. So title, summary, and image are kind of important because then that will lead to when somebody shares that blog entry, you will see an image with that blog. You'll see a title, and probably, if the space allows, the summary abstract in there. The other stuff is kind of nice just to tie things back to, publisher being SolarWinds or your whatever the thing is in there. But so that's an example of using tags and being able to keep things automated while making sure that it you get the right SEO coverage for things like blogs in there. On all of these, whenever you're doing filling out the default fields in there, just a little aside, you can always go to the browse available tokens, and then you can see there's all sorts of stuff. Sometimes you may have to play around with because some of the tokens don't work exactly as you think they would, but it's not that hard to kind of figure out what you want. And Drupal 8 has actually kind of simplified the tokens. Drupal 7 used to have like all these colon modifiers that you would do, like .title colon raw colon. You could get a whole bunch of stuff. They've dropped those in Drupal 8. So how would you do schema.org data with meta tag? So if you go down, basically one of the options you have, in this case, the global front page settings, you can click that up and you can see, organization. So type is going to be an organization, additional type, corporation. ID, once again, this is that URI, so you want to make that unique to your corporation. I tend to use you should note I've got some custom tags in there because when it comes to internationalization, some of the tags don't quite cover it. But anyway, I usually go for the English is our main website. Go to the English site, number sign organization, because that's going to be unique in there. And you can see you can fill out a whole bunch of other stuff, like this is where you do the same as URL to get there. You can do telephone numbers in there. Some of the one of the things that is, one of the things that sometimes is a little hard to figure out is that the schema.org will say you can have for instance here, areas served here. That can be multiple areas. So what they've done here is they've implemented, what the schema.org module people have done is they created a concept called pivot. So you can see area served pivot in there. What that basically means is every field, so when you look at this with EMA, Americas, I can't really read all of those, but the different fields there, those are comma separated. So when it produces the LDAP, JSON-LDAP for that, LDAP wrong, going back to an ancient module, but the LD JSON output, that's going to actually be area served, and then there's going to be multiple entries under that based on the comma type thing. So each field, if you got 5 areas served, you'll have those areas separated by comma, and then phone numbers will be those areas separated by comma, so you basically can say, I'm putting multiple entries in with one kind of, without Drupal having to do a whole bunch of Ajax and adding stuff in there. And this is basically just kind of an example of, all the detail you can get into for organizations. You can go crazy as you want to in here. Once again, I go back to the kind of the golden rule. Well, if you're doing it for storefront, what are the things people are going to see on that graph? Hours of operation, types of food, where your menu is, phone numbers, all of that stuff. So kind of think about what Google presents and then add that to your organization. So if you get down to if you want to edit a single entity and you've added the meta tag field as an option, when you're editing the node down here in the tabs area, you will see a meta tags drop down, which you can drop down, and then you can actually fill in those same kind of forms for this specific entity. So yeah, we have a lot of, everybody thinks their particular information is unique and they can manage their SEO better than we can do it globally, and they force us to have separate entries on a lot of things. I'm sure other organizations will work the same way. Views, how do you do them in views? Well, once you turn on the views meta tag, under the page setting, the central column there, you'll have the ability to set meta tags on the specific view page. So if you've got something like your list of all your blogs, your list of all your products, your list of all your stores or whatever, and that's being generated by a view page, you can actually go in here and then set that specific metadata to explain to the search engines what this page is. So now you've got all this stuff added through through the meta tag module and everything. How do you know that it's all working right? Well, Google has a structured data testing tool. So you can put a URL in there and it will show you kind of what it gets out of that page in there. Sometimes it can kind of look like you miss stuff. For instance, you may have an organization and a website there. The website refers to the organization, so Google will actually kind of say, well, you're talking about a website. The organization is part of the website class, even though the organization object is actually out there. So it's showing you inside the website your organization information, but not calling it out as a separate unit in there. So if you get into that situation, you just go into your website and make sure when you click on organization, you see all the stuff you want to see there. OG validation. Facebook has a real nice tool for validating whether or not your blog entries and stuff, and showing you what images they're going to use in there. The other thing that's nice about this tool is if you ever have to swap out an image for a blog, you can go here and tell Facebook to invalidate their cache and load the new image, because Facebook loads their images from their own cache servers in there. So I think one of the things I missed was internationalization from the, back to where, well, I'll just talk about that without the. So, first thing is I think it's finally in the actual meta tag, the latest meta tag version. I did a patch to support internationalization in terms of the website and web pages in there. what you do, basically there are fields called translation of work. There is a language field, there's a translation of work, and there's also the translated work fields. So for instance, we have a total of 6 different languages. So the English shows as being in English, it's a English translation of work. I think it's the term they use, translation of work. And then we have the ID references to our, German, French, Italian, Spanish, Portuguese versions of the site. And then on the Portuguese version, that will be marked as Portuguese translation of the English version. So you kind of pick your main one, and then basically the other ones are considered to be translations of that work in there. So if you're concerned with multiple languages there. So almost there. Some things to know. The meta tag schemas will just like blow up your node edit forms by adding all of those different things in there. So, it's a good thing to kind of be able to go in and say, oh, I only need these on these pages or these content types. Because otherwise, loading the node to edit can take a long time because it's generating all of the, all of that stuff that's in that dropdown gets added in there. I don't think I pointed it out, but there is a settings in the meta tag where you can go and say, for this content type, only use, if you've got a content type for front page, you may say only put organization and website on the front page, because that's the only place you need it. Don't put it on your blogs or other things, so you basically can control how much form stuff is being added on each individual node in there. Or if you can handle stuff at the global level, you may not even have to add the meta tags field in there. Just something to be aware. I did mention that the translation linkage properties that's the issue number, but like I said, I think they finally rolled that into the current module in there. And as kind of alluded to with the front page stuff, you actually can get dinged if you put organization and website on every single page. You really should put it on places where Google would expect that to be, like the home page, maybe the about page. We usually just put it on the home page. So, just a brief thing on, sometimes there's not a module to support the metadata you want. Our SEO agency asked us to do a bunch of nav items to try to influence the nav items that you see when you do get that site search in there. If you need to do that, the place to look is the page attachments alter. And, this is just some quick code in here. It's calling, the value here is basically calling, in this case I didn't put the function in there, but a function that's going through and creating, basically you just create the structure you want as a bunch of PHP arrays, and then you JSON encode it and return it, because LD JSON is JSON. And I think that's the last of it. Hopefully, I know it's a complicated thing, and it's the last session of the day, so everybody's like dragging. So, any questions? Totally confused? Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that, that's kind of the magic sauce. That depends on if it's, like if you're talking about doing stuff for Facebook, you can actually go to the deployment tool and force it to update. If you're talking about Google, you can go on the Google search console and potentially then say, do that. Otherwise, it's going to be, the next cycle that comes through. Depends on your site map, how long you tell it things are going to change, and how often Google decides to do your stuff. But there, like I say, you can influence through the Google search content. Yeah. Oh, totally confused? I said, this is a hard thing. I thought briefly about saying, yeah, can I put together something for a half-day training session? Okay, well, see you all tonight at the after, or everybody going to the after, or the after party, mid party, whatever they call it. You should, it's fun. And this year it's not going to be cold. Last year the temperature was like 40 degrees and we were all huddled around the heaters out on the... Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you.